Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm AI David Bowles, and along with our Crackbot AI research team, we have investigated this topic for you today. Claiming space. Exploring the intricacies of squatters' rights in urban and digital territories. And now we stretch into the boundaries of ownership and possession. Squatters' rights. This concept challenges our conventional views on what it means to own property and how property rights are enforced in society. We'll explore not just the historical and legal aspects of squatters taking over land and buildings, but also venture into modern complexities like digital squatting and the occupation of movable properties. Squatting, or adverse possession, is a legal doctrine that allows a person to gain ownership of a property under certain conditions. This notion might seem straightforward. Occupy a space long enough, and it becomes yours. But as we think, we uncover layers of legal, ethical, and societal implications that complicate this seemingly simple idea. From urban centers where housing crises have pushed the limits of what people will do to secure a home, to the digital frontiers where domain names and social media profiles become territories to be claimed, the concept of squatting reveals much about the evolving challenges of governance and law in our modern world. How can property owners protect themselves from those looking to exploit loopholes in property laws? What are the moral and social implications of squatting in spaces, both physical and digital? These are just some of the questions we'll address as we examine the diverse manifestations of squat-to-own practices and their impact on our understanding of property and ownership in contemporary society. Join me as we navigate these murky waters, shedding light on both the darkness and opportunities that squatting presents in a changing world. The roots of adverse possession stretch back to Roman times but were formalized in English common law, from which many of today's legal doctrines in the United States, Canada, and other former British colonies are derived. The idea was pragmatic. It aimed to ensure that land was used efficiently. If a piece of land was abandoned or not being used by the owner and someone else was willing to develop it, then this could be beneficial for society as a whole. The principle of adverse possession requires a squatter to meet several key criteria before claiming ownership. The squatter's possession must be actual, open and notorious, exclusive, hostile, and continuous for a certain period, typically ranging from 5 to 30 years, depending on local laws. Each of these terms carries specific legal meaning. For instance, hostile does not imply aggression, but rather that the squatter's use of the land is without the owner's permission. One classic historical example of adverse possession is the homesteading laws in the United States, such as the Homestead Act of 1862. This act allowed applicants to acquire land at little or no cost in the American West, provided they improved the land by building a dwelling and cultivating the soil. While not adverse possession in the classic legal sense, the spirit of the law was similar: to encourage the productive use of land and settle vast stretches of territory. Let's also consider a more recent example to illustrate how squatters' rights can play out. In the case of an urban environment where real estate is at a premium, derelict houses or abandoned plots can sometimes be occupied by squatters. In cities like Detroit or Baltimore, where economic downturns left many houses vacant, squatters have moved in, sometimes improving these properties and petitioning for their legal ownership after years of occupancy and care. Critics of squatters' rights argue that it can undermine property rights, creating uncertainty for landowners and complicating real estate transactions. Supporters, however, view it as a form of social justice, providing legal means for the disenfranchised to obtain property and improve their lives, especially in regions where land records are poor or housing crises are prevalent. The discussion of squatters' rights intersects rightly with themes of justice, efficiency, and morality. It raises questions about the balance between private property rights and the public good, and whether laws should favor land development and utilization over strict ownership. In essence, squatters' rights encapsulate a fundamental challenge in law and society: how to resolve the conflict between the static nature of ownership and the dynamic forces of societal needs. It's a vivid example of how our legal system continually adapts to balance individual rights with the needs of the community. Now, as we move into a more contemporary exploration of squatters' rights, it's crucial to examine how this age-old concept is playing out in modern urban landscapes. In big cities around the world, the phenomenon of squatters taking over private homes and even entire apartment complexes has become increasingly common, posing complex legal and ethical questions. Let's start by understanding the legality of such takeovers. Under the law, these acts of squatting are typically illegal when they occur in privately owned homes and buildings that are clearly maintained and inhabited. Unlike the historical context, where unused or abandoned land could be claimed after continuous and open use, modern squatter claims often involve properties that have clear legal ownership and may only be temporarily vacant. For example, in cities like London or New York, housing shortages and skyrocketing rents have led to squatters occupying buildings that are under renovation or temporarily empty. Although these squatters might argue that they are making productive use of otherwise vacant spaces, their occupation lacks the legal basis required for a claim of adverse possession, because it does not meet the criteria of being open and notorious or hostile in the traditional legal sense. The issue becomes even murkier when squatters take over entire apartment complexes, particularly in regions experiencing economic decline where owners may have abandoned properties. In these cases, while the initial act of squatting is illegal, the process of eviction can become complicated if local laws provide protections for tenants' rights, which might be manipulated to delay or avoid eviction. For homeowners or landlords facing such situations, the path to reclaiming their property typically involves legal action. The first step is usually to issue a formal eviction notice. If squatters refuse to leave, the property owner must then file an eviction lawsuit, a process that can be time-consuming and costly. During this period, the burden is often on the homeowner to prove ownership and demonstrate that the squatters do not have permission to occupy the property. However, the moral and ethical dimensions of squatting in modern cities are not to be overlooked. Some argue that in the face of housing crises and severe shortages of affordable homes, squatting can be seen as a form of protest against inequitable housing policies and unaffordable urban living conditions. Squatters sometimes transform neglected areas into livable spaces, raising questions about the best use of urban land and buildings. This begs the question: is it just to evict squatters who have nowhere else to go? Or should cities find more constructive solutions to the housing shortage that might include making use of empty and underutilized spaces? Here lies the crux of the modern squatters' rights debate. It's a clash between the legal rights of property owners and the practical realities of urban housing shortages. While squatters taking over homes and apartment complexes in major cities are generally acting outside the law, the response to such situations requires a delicate balance between enforcing property rights and addressing the broader social issues at play. As cities grow and evolve, so too must our approaches to housing and property laws, always with an eye toward justice and the common good. This is a vivid reminder of how the static nature of law often lags behind the dynamic needs of human societies. Squat-to-own practices aren't confined solely to land and buildings. They extend into various other forms of property and even digital spaces. This broader view of squatting reveals complex interactions between laws, societal norms, and individual actions. Each instance of squatting brings its own set of legal, ethical, and social implications, and understanding these can illuminate broader issues in property rights and social justice. In the digital realm, a form of squatting often occurs with domain names and social media. Domain squatting or cyber squatting involves registering, trafficking in, or using a domain name with the intent to profit from the goodwill of a trademark belonging to someone else. For example, a person might purchase a domain that is a misspelling of a popular brand, hoping to capture stray traffic or to sell the domain to the brand owner at a high price. This form of squatting has been largely addressed by legal frameworks such as the Anti-Cyber Squatting Consumer Protection Act in the United States, which provides a clear path for trademark owners to dispute domain registrations and claim rights. Social media squatting occurs when someone creates an account using the name of a well-known entity or person, potentially to mislead followers or to secure the username with the hope of selling it to the rightful name owner. Platforms typically have policies to combat this, allowing affected parties to claim their intellectual property or identity. In a more physical context, squatting can also occur with movable properties such as vehicles or boats. Here, the implications are often directly tied to the lack of use and oversight. For instance, abandoned vehicles or boats might be occupied and used by individuals without any formal claim to ownership. Such situations are less protected by laws akin to adverse possession, as these laws typically focus on immovable property. However, they highlight similar ethical questions about the use and stewardship of property. Protecting oneself against squatters involves several proactive measures, both legally and practically. Regular checks and maintenance of property can prevent squatting before it starts. For land or buildings, this could mean regular visits, installing security systems, or hiring property management services. Ensuring all property, including digital assets, is properly documented and registered with the relevant authorities can deter squatting and provide a clear recourse if squatters attempt to take possession. Posting signs that indicate private ownership and installing physical barriers can help deter squatters from occupying land or other types of property. If squatting occurs, quick legal action is crucial. The longer squatters remain on the property, the more complicated and time-consuming the eviction process can become. Engaging with the local community can also serve as a deterrent to squatting. In many cases, squatters rely on the anonymity and neglect of a community to take over properties. Being involved and present in the community can help mitigate these risks. The implications of squatting are multifaceted. Ethically and socially, squatting often highlights underlying issues such as poverty, homelessness, and the inadequacies of housing policies. Legally, it challenges property owners to be vigilant and responsive. Economically, it can either be seen as a loss to the rightful owner or as a pragmatic use of neglected resources, depending on one's perspective. As we reach the close of our examination of squatters' rights and the broader implications of squat-to-own practices, it becomes clear that this is more than a legal discourse. It's a right exploration of societal values and the essence of ownership. Throughout our discussion, we've seen how squatting stretches from the physical realms of land and buildings to the intangible frontiers of digital spaces. We've uncovered the historical roots that paint a picture of necessity and practicality, driving home the point that laws surrounding property are as much about ethics and efficiency as they are about possession and control. The stories of squatters in urban settings battling housing crises and seeking shelter in abandoned nooks of bustling cities challenge our perceptions of legality versus morality. They provoke us to ask whether laws serve the people or if people serve the laws. In the digital realm, where cyber-squatting tests the boundaries of trademark and identity, we are forced to confront similar dilemmas about creativity, innovation, and the right to space, even in a virtual context. Protecting oneself from squatting, whether through vigilant monitoring, engaging with the community, or understanding and applying the law, is crucial. Yet, these actions also lead to deeper reflections on our responsibilities as property owners and community members. How do we balance personal rights with social needs? How do we ensure that our responses to squatting do not merely address the symptoms but also the underlying causes such as poverty, displacement, and social disenfranchisement? As we conclude, let's remember that the essence of this discussion isn't just about the legal frameworks that govern our spaces, but about the human stories intertwined with these laws. It's about finding just and compassionate solutions that honor both the letter of the law and the spirit of humanity. The challenge of squatting in all its forms asks us not just to be better lawmakers or property owners, but better stewards of the world we inhabit together. Thank you for joining us today for the Human Meme Podcast. I'm AI David Bowles, wishing you a pleasant evening and a good tomorrow. Be a human meme.